Story 1. I was walking home from a party. This was around the time I graduated high school, so I decided to have a wild night. I had about 3 or 4 mixed drinks and felt very drunk for my size. We stopped by a kid's house, and he sat down with a large bowl of something he said was a strain he still remembers today. Alaskan Thunderfuck is not a name or experience you forget, so I took a hit, and this is where the story gets a bit mixed up. According to a friend, I started skipping away, happily like a flower child through lilies. I began walking down the road I used to take to middle school all those years ago. I passed by the usual mansion with a stone statue of a sheep, and I fell. Water rushed up into my legs, and I felt cold creek water hitting me. I realized how fragile my life was. Before I knew it, I was already out and standing again in the middle of the street. I looked around, and there wasn't even a creek to be seen. I began to think I had imagined it because I didn't feel cold at all. I looked at myself, and of course I was completely drenched in water. I frantically walked around, hoping for answers, but the only thing I could find was an empty barren spot on the ground where the stone lamb used to be. I also saw my parents' car in that driveway. I remembered they had left the house for a friend's that night. I was convinced I had stolen the lamb, and instead of confessing to my crime, I ran all the way home, passing a friend's car as they drove by. A stoned blonde kid and a stone lamb stared at me from outside the window. I passed out in my bed, still soaking wet. My mattress smelled like creek water and booze, and I knew I had messed up somehow, even if I couldn't understand it. I later found out that I had also been an accomplice in a watermelon and spaghetti bomb that was featured on the news the next night. Story 2. So, this is a pretty recent story, so I'll have to leave out some details. Let me tell you what happened when I was in a similar situation back in 2013. I knew this girl for about a year, but we never really talked because she thought I was weird. And honestly, she was right. But anyway, one weekend, just before Valentine's Day, we were all hanging out, getting drunk, and having a blast with our friends. She was dating this guy at the time, and I hadn't, been with anyone in a while. The last time was actually with one of our friends who was there that night, so I wasn't really thinking about anything serious. A few hours pass, and we're all really drunk. She asks if she can set my beard on fire. I'm thinking, why not, and hand her my lighter. Suddenly, my face is on fire. I quickly sober up and decide to shave off my beard after hitting myself in the face a few times. Yeah, it was a crazy moment. As I'm finishing up, she comes into the room to use the bathroom. I ask if I can get a kiss, and she agrees. Fast forward to May of the same year, and I'm getting married to her. It turns out she's amazing in bed and is always down for my wild adventures. So I think, why not 2 months later, I join the army, and things start getting tough. But I'm determined to be strong for her. When I finish basic training, I'm reunited with her, and she looks stunning with her new hair color. She's radiating beauty. We hug, grab a bite to eat, take a cab, and spend a passionate night together in a hotel. I even enjoy a cigarette for the first time in a while, and it feels great. Few months later, I hit rock bottom and try to take my own life. I'd been struggling with mental health issues and felt like I couldn't go on. But I survive, and the army sends me to a psychiatric ward. They tell me I'm done serving. I leave the hospital, realizing I'm not in a good place to be a good partner for her. 3 days later, I call her and say, we need to get a divorce. She doesn't argue, maybe because she doesn't know how. I'm out of the army by December and move in with friends. Her dad shows up a few weeks later with the divorce papers, and we finalize everything quickly. Fast forward to June. I'm struggling with depression and trying to get my life together. I'm drinking almost every day and smoking constantly. One day, the person I'm living with threatens me. I go out drinking that night, and the next day, I come back ready to fight. But my friend steps in quickly, puts me in a chokehold, and tells me to leave or they'll call the police. I realize I have nothing to lose and nothing to gain from this situation, so I leave. Story 3. I had a close call when I was 6 years old on a trip to Romania. My family and I were visiting an orphanage we had been supporting for a while. We traveled as a group to this place. We landed in Hungary and took a bus over the border. When we got to customs, an officer came onto the bus with a big gun, which really scared my brother. The officer was looking for people who were trying to enter the country illegally, but luckily he didn't cause us any harm. We finally arrived at the orphanage and everything was okay. The adults from our group were trying to learn some Romanian phrases, while my brother and I spent a lot of time playing top trumps. One of the things we donated to the family who ran the orphanage was our beloved Sega Mega Drive game console. My brother and I agreed to give it away, but we've regretted that decision ever since. We miss playing all the games we had on that console. The next day, everyone started working. I remember the women painting fences while the men dug trenches to fix the pipes and prepare for winter. As a young child, I couldn't help with any of this, so I spent my time chasing cats around and trying to get close to the guard dogs. On the second or third day, I got bored and sat down to wait for a cat named Thomas to come out from where I had chased him. I didn't notice that behind the little ledge I was sitting on, there was a steep staircase leading down to a cellar below the house. In the 90s, safety wasn't a big priority like it is today. As I sat waiting for Thomas, the next thing I knew, I was in my mom's arms and she was telling me to stay awake. I ended up in a hospital in Romania, which was a really scary experience. The nurses even made a makeshift pillow for me using a pillowcase and a cardigan because we were paying patients. We even had to take a consultation room from someone else who was in the middle of their appointment, which my parents still feel terrible about. Luckily, I didn't suffer any serious injuries from the fall, even though I landed flat on my back. That's my wild story. Story 4. When I was around 13 or 14 years old, something interesting happened. I was at my friend's house, and her grandma called me into the living room. She wanted to show me something through the big picture window that looked out onto the street. The window faced our other friend's house, which was right across the street. So I went into the living room, and her grandma was gesturing for me to hurry up and come over to the window. So I walk over to the window and see a red car parked in front of the driveway across the street. A man gets out, opens the trunk of his car, pulls out a plastic bag, and throws it into the bushes in front of our friend's house. Then, he quickly gets back in his car and drives away fast. By this time, I grab my friend and we send a text message to the girl who lives across the street, telling her to come and see what the man just dropped in her bushes. So, all four of us, my friend, her grandma, our other friend, and I go to the bushes to check out the bag. My friend's grandma uses a stick to carefully open the bag and peek inside. She finds a needle and some heroin. Since she's a nurse, she knows how to handle the situation safely. She holds the bag with the stick, and we all go back inside the house. She calls the police while we wait in the living room. Then, we see the same red car pull up outside again. The same man gets out of the car and walks towards the bushes. When he realizes the bag is gone, he becomes frantic. He's pulling his hair out and running around the bushes, trying to find his bag. Eventually, he gives up and leaves. Soon after, the police arrive and ask us what happened. We tell them everything we saw. The officer takes the bag and tells us that this is the third heroin drop in our area in just 1 week. I was a part of this whole ordeal because my friend's grandma loves to observe people and enjoys watching what's going on in the neighborhood. It was a really crazy day.